Let's talk to Mark Garnier MP, Shadow Financial Minister for the Tory party, of course. Mark, very good morning to you.
Very good morning, Mike.
Series of calamities to talk about this morning, Mark, including Keir Starmer not being able to pronounce smuggling gangs. Let me just play it to you. How is he this bad? Come on.
To smash the people smuggling gangs.
I'm sorry to make fun of him, but he is the Prime Minister of this nation. He is supposed to be able to speak publicly, and yet this is not the first time he's done something this ridiculous. Who can forget when he said sausages instead of hostages? Why is he so hopeless?
I don't know, and it's really surprising actually, Mike, because this guy is a well-renowned criminal barrister, and so you would have thought the one thing he would be able to talk very well at is getting his words right.
Well, you would think.
There we go. I guess he's as human as the rest of us.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not accepting that because he's the Prime Minister and he's front and centre representative of this country. He's just been in Paris, you know, sort of marching around with Emmanuel Macron, looking for all intents and purposes like a great dictator. He then goes off to COP29, where no other leader goes, and speaks there about reducing our carbon footprint by 81% in 10 years' time. I mean, he's a sort of loose cannon going around the world making promises that he can't keep, isn't he?
What strikes me as being remarkable about him is actually how little we've seen of him since he became the Prime Minister. But you're absolutely right, Mike. You know, he's been charging up around the world. He's been getting onto to world stages in front of rooms just half full of people who clearly don't want to necessarily listen to what he's got to say. You know, he's not the most exciting of individuals. I mean, I've met him a few times and I've always got on quite well with him. But is he an inspirational leader? Probably not.
No, inspirational is not a word I think I would ever think of using to describe him. Let's talk about what's going on around the Prime Minister's office, though, because, of course, we still don't know really what's going on inside of Downing Street. There's an awful lot of words being written in various different newspaper columns, but nobody really knows what's happening with Lord Ali anymore. Nobody really knows what's happening with Sue Gray anymore. She appears to not be taking up the job that she was meant to take up. Lord Ali, we don't know whether he's still got access to Downing Street. We don't know what he did when he did have access to Downing Street. You know, there's still an awful lot of questions about this Labour government which have never been answered.
It's a really peculiar situation, and it shows an extraordinary lack of judgment by this new government. You know, it's not just that; it's Taylor Swift Gate, it's Free Clothes Gate, it's all this other kind of stuff that's coming on. And you know, for a party that was so, you know, sort of enthusiastic about standards in public life and all the rest of it, I have been very surprised by how much they've been getting this wrong on very, very simple stuff. You know, Sue Gray is kind of the internal politics of the Prime Minister's office. Lord Ali is a donor. You know, you would have thought they'd have got that right. You would have definitely thought they would have realised that going off to multiple concerts at, you know, £300,000, £500,000 a ticket is going to look bad. You would have thought they would have just done that to make it look good. But apparently not. It's bad judgment. It's very strange.
Yeah. Let's talk about financial matters as well. You're the Shadow Financial Minister. I mean, the budget, which happened now 2 weeks ago, is still being talked about. It's still making headlines in the newspapers. This morning, we've got on the front page of the Times, almost three-quarters of universities on course to be in deficit in the next academic year, despite an increase in tuition fees, according to a story in the Times, because of all the extra money that they're having to pay out now in national insurance. Private schools are not happy, of course, because they're getting VAT imposed upon them. We've got farmers about to demonstrate in Westminster next Tuesday because of the inheritance tax scenario. We've got businesses telling the government that the national insurance hike is going to cripple them. They're going to have to sack people and they're going to probably have to put their prices up. I mean, you know, it's a disaster financially, isn't it?
I think it's going to get worse. One of the interesting things that hasn't come out of all of this is when you look at Labour's education tax. So this is the VAT on education for private school fees. What hasn't been talked about is that once you cross this Rubicon, because the history of this has been that you don't charge VAT on things that are a human right, like education. They've crossed that Rubicon. Now, when are they going to start charging VAT on university fees? Because actually the natural progression of this is university fees. So there's potentially a big problem barreling down their way, trying to explain why they're not doing what is the next obvious thing to do.
Yeah.
But look, it has been extraordinary. I know Rachel Reeves quite well. I sat next to her on the Treasury Select Committee for 2 or 3 years when we were going through all the banking reform stuff. And the one thing that always struck me about her is she's very book smart. She's got a degree in economics from LSE. She's a very clever person. But in this cabinet, I think one of them has ever worked in the private sector. And so you can be book smart but street dumb. And it's very, very interesting that, on things like national insurance contributions, of course, if you're going to tax the business community 25 billion, of course you're going to get a slowdown in GDP. If you talk down the economy, of course you're going to get a slowdown in GDP. So it's very strange that they've missed out on the blindingly obvious stuff, which is that, you've got to talk up the economy. You've got to be positive about it. You've got to, if you are going to increase the minimum living wage, which is not an unreasonable thing by itself to do, don't do it with an increase in national insurance contributions, and don't do it at the same time as you're having the workers' rights bill going through Parliament. Because businesses can take one thing at a time. They can possibly take two things, but not three things. That's the point. It's about being street dumb.
Yeah, and that is the problem, because we've got figures this morning from the Office for National Statistics saying the UK economy grew by just 0.1% between July and September. And we've got Rachel Reeves saying this morning that basically she's not satisfied with those numbers and she wants to make the growth actually increase. But at the moment, there's no sign that anything that she's done will make growth increase.
Well, indeed, the OBR has said it's going to slow down.
Yeah.
So the budget talks about over the 5-year period, the economy slowing down to be slower than it would otherwise have been had they not done anything in the budget. So no, it's peculiar what they've done. It doesn't make any sense. And of course, the other point is you can keep banging on about the legacy that they've inherited. Actually, they've inherited the best legacy. We were the fastest growing G7 economy. Inflation was back to the target rate. Things were good on the wider economy, public finances. We've had COVID. I mean, we've got to fess up to public finances being strained as a result of action that the government took because of quite necessary exterior factors. But if you talk down the economy, you will talk down business confidence and you will talk down economic growth rates. And if you add that to a poorly thought through budget, then this is what you get. So they're basically reaping what they've sown.
Well, they are. And there doesn't seem to be any way out of this, does there? I mean, there's got the Bank of England as well this morning talking about rebuilding trade relations with the European Union. Rachel Reeves famously boasts about working as an economist at the Bank of England, even though some people dispute that and say she was never an economist at the Bank of England. I don't know. But Andrew Bailey has said, although it's not the job of the Bank of England to take a position on Brexit, it was his job to point out the consequences. I think we all know what the code for that is. He didn't like Brexit. He wishes we didn't do it, and he's now saying we should rebuild trade relations. Well, as far as I know, there's nothing wrong with trade relations with the EU, is there?
Well, they're a bit stickier than they were on goods. I mean, he pointed out that services have been less affected by the trade in goods than the trade in goods has been. But he did talk about how the economy is lacking on the supply side. So the supply side is usually workers. So one of the things we had with the European Union was we had workers that would come when we needed them, and when we didn't need them, they'd go back. Well, that was the general idea. Having said that, the problem is if you bring in any number of, kind of a whole load of different people, they will increase the size of your economy, but not the economy per capita. So what we want to do is if we do have a relationship with the EU where we will take workers, we need to be certain that any workers that come from the EU are more productive than those workers we have at the moment, thereby increasing the economy per capita, not just increasing the size of the economy because you've filled it up with more people.
But when is somebody in politics going to take the bull by the horns and grasp the nettle, if you'll pardon all the various comparisons that I'm going to give, when is somebody going to say, but we've got millions of people in this country who don't work, who could work? Right, and instead of saying we must import people because we haven't got anybody who does to do certain jobs, why don't we make the people who are on welfare actually go back to work?
Well, this is what we were doing. So Mel Stride was doing welfare reform in order to try to do exactly that, and one would hope that the new government will come through with more of this. But we've got to see more evidence of it. But you raise a very, very important point. There are an awful lot of people who are in the economy who, since COVID have not gone back to work. We've got a lot of people who are on long-term sick. Some people can be on, very seriously affected by disability or whatever it happens to be that actually does mean they can't work. But as I think Mel Stride once described it, there are people who feel a little bluesy, maybe who are sort of feeling low, who don't go back to work, when in fact in some cases going back to work can be the best thing, being part of a community.
Well, exactly right. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. But, the way that things have gone on, and to be fair, many of them went on under the 14 years of Tory rule, more and more people are able to not only claim benefits for not working, but they claim more benefits when they work as well.
Yeah, they do. I mean, we did bring through benefit reform a long time ago with the sort of the I can't remember what it was called now, but it was universal benefits, and there was a very, very complicated legacy that was left over from the then sort of 2010 Labour government, which meant that you know, for a single mother going back into work, the effective tax rate for her was about 95% at a certain level, because you lose your benefits and you don't get that much of a sort of corresponding increase in salary to do it. So there was a whole lot that was done there, and yet more can be done. But I mean, if you go back to when the whole of the sort of welfare state was brought in under the Beveridge report, you know, Sir William Beveridge, when he wrote it back in 70 years ago, made the important point that the benefits should be tough. They shouldn't be a viable alternative to working. And since then, over a long period of time, governments have paid more in benefits as a percentage. I think they're up sort of 50 or 100% relative to what they were originally. So it's less difficult being on benefit. And look, at the end of the day, you know, we really don't want to sort of consign, you know, people fall off life's ladder. We want them to get back on the ladder. And so it is government to retrain them, to help them find jobs, all of that kind of stuff, and to support them while they're doing that. But Mike, you're right. What we don't want to do is to find people seeing that living on benefits is a viable alternative to being a contributing member of society.
Yeah, exactly. So the narrative has to change. Somebody has to change it. So let's see if we can do that. Mark, thank you very much indeed. Mark Garnier MP, Shadow Financial Minister.